Vamos a continuar porque llega una mesa redonda crucial de la mañana. Vamos a hablar de European Chips Act 2.0, porque una estrategia nacional pues, no tiene ningún sentido si no hay un refuerzo europeo detrás, ¿verdad? Ese marco europeo en el que hablamos de financiación, de soberanía tecnológica, también de competitividad y de muchas otras cosas. Así que at the next table, we will discuss all of this: regulation, financing, opportunities and challenges with European Chips Act 2.0. Let me introduce the members of the panel. Pierre Chastanet, Director of the Cloud and Software Unit at the European Commission. Oliver Schenck, European Parliament member. Javier Ponce, General Director of the Spanish Society Technological Transformation. And this panel will be moderated by Raquel Jorge, Director of European Affairs at ADIGITAL. A round of applause for all of them, both those who are here in person and those who are participating via video conference. Okay, let's go.
Hello, good morning, or good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Raquel Jorge, as our colleague said. I'm the Director for European Affairs and the Brussels office at ADIGITAL, the Spanish Industry Association on the digital economy, where we very much collaborate with institutions such as SETT, with Mr. Javier Ponce, and also with, we have already had some meetings with Pierre Chastanet from the European Commission, and not yet with Oliver Schenck, but we look forward to it. And today we will be speaking about the European angle of the semiconductor industry. Concretely, the title is about the European Chips Act 2.0, so the next expected proposal for a second version of the European Chips Act. As you know, in September 2023, the first European Chips Act entered into force already 2 years ago, and some of the results have been tangible. In terms of investments, we have seen a flow of both public and private investments into the building up of facilities, of infrastructures, both in design but also in manufacturing. Also, in terms of regulation, we have seen an adjustment of some legislative, let's say, frameworks that allow the growth, uptake, and deployment of semiconductor elements from the lower stage of the supply chain to the higher one. And also in terms of resilience, we have seen an improvement in the ways and means by which the governments across member states plus the European Union institutions as such have improved how they address external threats or external dependencies from third countries that may produce a high risk in the semiconductor supply chain. We are talking about resilience, we are talking about security, and currently now with some news, as Mr. Javier Ponce shared at the beginning of this morning, there are as well some restrictions by third countries in terms of export control regimes for indirect investment. But today we'll be speaking about a very concrete topic, which is how do we expect that the European Chips Act 2.0 proposal will look like? And second, both in similar terms, and second, how investments are working right now and how they should be improved, both from the public investors, such as SETT, but also from the private institutional investors, such as family offices, venture capital, LPs, etc. Now we will start with the first part. In the first part, I would like you to address how investments are being mobilized on European Union soil, concretely with the support from the European Commission, but also all the requirements and policy needs that are transmitted by the European Parliament, and also the concrete case of the Spanish Society for Technological Transformation in Spain. So let's get started with Mr. Pierre Chastanet from the European Commission. Thank you, Pierre.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm very happy to be with you today, albeit remotely. I will try to share my presentation. I hope this is coming up on your side and that you can see my screen. I will try to put this full screen. Is that working for you?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, perfect. So I'll maybe get started with recalling a bit what the European Chips Act is about and what it's delivering, because of course, Chips Act 2 is on everybody's lips as we're undertaking the public consultation for the revision of the current Chips Act. But it's very important to understand that my team, the industrial ecosystem across Europe, our research technology organization, they are going full swing into the actual implementation of the current Chips Act. And it's very important to focus on that implementation. So not only look at the future, things that we need to address in the future, but also look at the current, look at the present, and making sure we get the best out of our current tools. So you recall the European Chips Act came in as an outcome of the COVID crisis. So Europe fell short of semiconductor in a number of manufacturing areas. In automotive, notably, Europe suffered enormously from this. But the EU quickly reacted in order to inject money into the development of production facilities and secure supply of critical semiconductors in Europe. At the same time, we wanted to improve our capacity to monitor and be able to respond to future crises by putting in place better monitoring system of semiconductor supply chain. Last but not least, we wanted to innovate, pursue innovation, and make sure that Europe stays at the forefront of semiconductor technologies. And that we improve our research and innovation infrastructure, our capacities to stay at the forefront of semiconductor technologies. And this has worked extremely well so far. On the first pillar that I was just highlighting on research and innovation, the Chips for Europe initiative, already 80% of the budget allocated to this, which represents 3.8 billion euros, has already been spent. And with this money, we have already launched 5 pilot lines. There is a competence center in every single member state. We're developing a European design platform to foster the fabless model, so small startup SMEs that will do design of semiconductor product. And last but not least, we have launched 6 pilot lines on quantum chips. Just in the case of Spain, there is a dedicated photonics pilot line that is being hosted in Spain. ICFO is the coordinator of that pilot line on photonics technologies, and we're very happy that Spain took the leadership to develop the coordination of that pilot line. On the second pillar, so for real manufacturing production facilities for semiconductor, we have already invested 32 billion euros across 7 manufacturing sites that are spread across Europe on a variety of semiconductor technologies that our European industry needs now. So all those manufacturing sites that are being rapidly built up, they correspond to immediate needs of our automotive industry, of our defense industry, of our medical device industry, our telecom industry as well. So they respond to the needs of European industry on capacities that did not exist previously in Europe. So this will guarantee the supply chain resilience for European industry in Europe. We have also injected over 20 billion euros in a common integrated project, an integrated project of common European interest, IPCI, on microelectronics that fosters beyond those manufacturing sites much broader set of projects across all over Europe, including Spain, of course, that has helped to foster the development of various projects, again in photonics, but also in advanced semiconductor design for artificial intelligence on chips that are needed for high-performance computing, notably. Nevertheless, despite all this success in the first Chips Act, it's very important that we reflect on where we are in Europe in the current geopolitical context and the fact that this geopolitical context is evolving very rapidly. Things that we were taking for granted until end of last year cannot be taken for granted anymore. For instance, we have been facing a threat from the US to cut a number of European countries from access to artificial intelligence semiconductor. And suddenly 17 member states could have been subject to quotas on getting access to AI technologies, and this will have profoundly undermined their capacity to develop, for instance, AI factories or AI gigafactories. Same thing coming out of China. We see China is rapidly increasing its capacity on mainstream semiconductor, the so-called legacy chips. But this is precisely the area where Europe is strong at. You know, those semiconductor that go in industrial appliances, that go in automotive, that go in medical devices. And we see China rapidly increasing production capacity with the threat that in a few years from now, they will flood the European market with this type of technology. So we need to respond to those emerging threats. We need in particular to address the fact that in Europe we do not have any capacity to produce advanced semiconductor, in particular AI chips. So we have very little design coming from HPC program notably, but we do not manufacture any. So we're entirely dependent on Taiwan and South Korea for the production of AI chips. We also see this type of increased dependency on China with threat of overcapacity being developed there. And we also see increasing risk pertaining to environmental spillover coming from the semiconductor industry, but where Europe can actually differentiate itself on all those aspects, be it security, be it environment. We can use Europe's unique competencies in those domains to produce novel, innovative semiconductor that meet a number of security and environmental requirements. I propose to leave it at this stage. I will come back later on the specific aspect on CHIPS Act 2 in the maybe next round of discussion.
Thank you, Pierre. Thank you very much. Yes, we can come back. We can go back to the next slides and the other topics later. But thanks for this presentation. I think it's very interesting to point out your reference to economic security, so the way in which the economy, concretely the semiconductor industry, has become a security opportunity, but also represents a security risk or threat, depending on the perspective that we are talking about and the partners that we do have in Europe. Now I would like to move to Oliver Schenck from the European Parliament to understand which are your views on how to build a strong semiconductor industry in Europe and how we can create an attractive investment environment for global and mostly EU players. Thank you, Oliver.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you to Pierre for this fruitful insight. For me, it's a great honor to be part of your convention today. And I remember very well the fruitful discussions we had. I think it was in April. It was this day with this blackout we had on the Iberian Peninsula. But it was nevertheless a very interesting visit. We had great talks. And I was impressed by the big efforts I see in Spain and how you speed up in the whole topic of semiconductors. And for me, this is absolutely the right way. And Pierre mentioned your efforts in these pilot lines. And if we look in the history, then history teaches us that each era is defined by one strategic resource. And in the 19th century, it was steel. And in the 20th century, we can say it was oil. And in our century, it is probably close linked to semiconductors. And let me therefore give you some more political and some ideas for a new narrative we need here in our group, because we have to convince other politicians and other people to follow us on this way. And if we look back during the pandemic in 2021, European car makers had to stop producing more than 1 million vehicles. Why? Because there was no demand, but because there were no chips. That crisis showed us that without semiconductors, Europe's industry can be brought to its knees in a matter of weeks. That is why we are here, have your convention today. And semiconductors are no longer just an industrial product. They are the foundation of our economy, our security, and our sovereignty. Europe cannot afford to be a spectator in this global race. We must be not only a participant, but a true competitor. And we see the first European Chips Act was a necessary first step. It gave our member states more flexibility. It enabled large-scale investments, the best example being TSMC's decision to come to Europe. But we must also be honest about its shortcomings. The target we announced with the CHIP Act was reaching 20% of global production by 2030 is really unrealistic. We are falling back to, we started by 8 and I think now we are between 6 or 7%. So the Act focused too narrowly, to my mind, on production capacity while neglecting other parts of the supply chain. The scale of funding remains modest compared to the other global initiatives. And finally, the risk of fragmented national strategies instead of one coherent European approach is still very real. So the question is, do we need a second CHIP Act? Do we have to invest more? Yes, of course we do. Competing in semiconductors means investing heavily, but smartly. First, we need to think about a dedicated budget that can rapidly support high-impact projects. This means faster decision-making and greater flexibility than we have had so far. The first CHIPS Act triggered some new fab announcements in Europe, but it also revealed a bottleneck. Projects depended on slow approvals. CHIPS Act 2 must streamline this. But public finance should act as a catalyst for private investments, not as a substitute. We need much more coordinated way to leverage private capital and give companies the confidence that Europe is all in on semiconductors. And we must never forget, semiconductors are not only industrial policies, but they are also security policy. We must build resilience against geopolitical risk and diversify our partnerships with trusted allies. But second, money and incentives alone will not succeed if the environment isn't right. Investors need predictability, speed, and a pro-innovation climate. Today, permits are too slow and complex. We must fix that at the European and international level. We should get inspiration from practices like, for example, the Net Zero Industry Act, setting clear timelines for permitting and simplifying procedures. And an even more, and maybe the most important topic is that we have to strengthen the cluster and network approach. Successful semiconductor ecosystems take decades to build. Europe must therefore commit long-term to cluster building. These clustering effects, already seen in Taiwan with their famous science parks, could also be an example for us. And we have several, I think also good clusters in Europe. Pierre showed us some on his slides there, yes? We have it in Italy, we have it in France, we have it here in Germany, my constituency. We saw developments in your country, in Spain. It's really interesting and very good to see the efforts you have in photonic development. And each region should concentrate on the strengths it has by itself. And I think we can look, if we look in European history, why was the European Union founded? It was a coalition of coal and steel. And we have this famous product in the air industry with Airbus. Why shouldn't we be able to really form a cluster and a European, very really competitive semiconductor industry? And we have really good and interesting companies. Europe is already a leader in niche such as automotive, semiconductors, power electronics, and lithography with ASML, for example. We should build on these strengths, but we must also look ahead. The global race has already begun in AI. Europe must not become dependent on foreign providers. A CHIPS Act 2.0 should therefore also address AI directly, linking semiconductor strategy with AI development. We must invest in our own knowledge base, infrastructure, and trusted applications, ensuring that European values are embedded in the digital systems of the future. With CHIPS Act 2.0, Europe must become a serious competitor. The next generation of mainstream chips, AI chips, 5G network, and green energy devices should proudly carry the label energied and made in Europe. Thank you.
Thank you, Oliver. Thank you very much. I think that you have raised several topics. Maybe we can go back to the security issue later. But you have specifically spoken about security, and this links the discussion very much to the next speaker, Javier Ponce, because sometimes, I remember in the 90s, there was, maybe you have heard about the Draghi report, the Mario Draghi report. So in the 90s, there was a very well-known report called the Bangeman report on how ICTs should be considered as a strategic asset for the European economy. At that time, Bangeman said in the 90s, we need to let the market work alone. But in the 2000s, the European Union realized that only the market made its efforts, indeed, but still there was a need for further cooperation with the government. And I think that now the creation of SETT, the Spanish Society for Technological Transformation, is a good example on how the public administration is making efforts to try to help the semiconductor industry in boosting its own growth and uptake. Concretely, in the case of SETT, you have been channeling the PERTE, the project for recovery and economic transformation in Spain after the COVID-19 pandemic, and your PERTE has a total of expected delivery of 12,000 million euros, which I would like to hear from you how those investments are flowing, if they are flowing well, and if they are not flowing properly, why? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, and I would like just to point out some of the key questions that we have deployed during the last 2 or 3 years in relation with PERTE chip, and what are the baseline that we have decided to support in Spain with this huge quantity of money that the Spanish government has allocated in this sector. Okay. First of all, we made a deep analysis of what are the strong position in which areas and in what activities we can support the present capacities we have. Okay, we have detected 3 main areas that Spain economy will need. Coming from semiconductors and microelectronics. First of all was just design, but this is not it's a strong position from Spain that is needed also for the European sovereignty. Okay, there are 2 main technologies in the world, 2 proprietary technologies for designing chips that no one belongs to the European entities, so Europe needs clearly a possibility, a technology that can be used by European companies to design the future chips that will be allocated in products and services. This is the technology that has been deployed and developed with public support from the European Commission and Spanish government. This is RISC-V. It's a well-known technology just now. Not only European are working on RISC-V. The 2 main areas working on RISC-V are Europe and China, and also some American companies and Japanese one are now starting positions in this technology because these technologies can some opportunities to decrease the energy consumption on chips, coming further than one of the proprietary technologies are, and have also a possibility to be more to have more density in chips in face of this second technology. So these are the position we decide for the very beginning. We have support a lot 2, 3 startups, Spanish startups that are now leading the European projects to design the first Europe microprocessor for high-performance computing. We expect just to have the first step out at last of next year, beginning of 2027, and we will see if we are able just to achieve a competitive chip in relation with the competitors we have just now. I would like just to remember that if you analyze why people buy NVIDIA chips, it's not only for the hardware, it's mainly for the software. Because the software that NVIDIA has been deployed, it's one of the best in the world to take more advantages of the hardware. And this is a critical way to design new chips. And I think Spain has a very strong position to join hardware and software. Everything is joining hardware and software. Automotive sector, today, the battle is just who will be the first to offer a unique software platform for the vehicle. So everything is joining hardware and software. We cannot forget this item. Okay? We need just to join efforts coming from design of hardware and coming from software just that will take advantage of these architectures. So the first support, it's these startups working on RISC-V, promising one that this is a technology maybe will solve the sovereignty for Europe in the future. The second area we have detected as a clear backbone that you need if you want to deploy your semiconductor sector is talent. Okay? What are we doing? It's just support chairs at your universities in Spain, more than 31, that assuring that the industry will be available just to capture right talent, adequate talent for deploying the introduction of microelectronics into every sector of the economy, because everything will have a chip in 20, 30 years. Everything will have something in order to be more intelligent, the product or the service you are using. And the third one is just the support for small and medium enterprises. We have an economic sectoral overview of the country that more than 95% of the industry are in small and medium enterprises. So who will help these small and medium enterprises to introduce microelectronics and to understand microelectronics in order to adequate the product to this big breakthrough in the economy? We have support a large infrastructure, public infrastructure, to deploy in collaboration with the best research and development center in Europe, in the world. This is IMEC, trying to deploy the second center in Europe to offer these possibilities of prototyping for small and medium enterprises in the future. So these are the three areas that we have put in our backbone, and we will deploy for the next during the next years. And now we are trying to add to this backbone some new investment in relation with manufacturing capacities, in relation to deploy the one pillar, special pillar that is photonic, and Valencia is one of the biggest photonic areas in Europe. We are the leaders of the pilot line in Europe of photonics, and now we are trying to attract industrial capacities in this area. Because we have detected in the world, if you want to establish a new large industrial capacity in semiconductors, you need off-takers. If you don't have off-takers that will buy the product, it's quite difficult to find investors. And this is the next step that Europe needs to do. And I agree with Oliver, yes, we need cluster to assure this off-taking exercise for the investors that will introduce these capacities in Europe. Without that, it's quite difficult to assure. And we need to take advantage of the large market we have in Europe to make these clusters that can assure this profitability for this investment.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So now we have discussed about the investments I mentioned. So Pierre Chastanet has shared the slide on state aid in some EU member states. Oliver has talked about the different angles of the semiconductor industry and the need for investments. And you have reflected, Javier, on how SETT from the Spanish public administration is fostering this industry. But now I would like to pick up some of the elements you have shared, because you have talked about RISC-V, which may be considered as open source. Pierre has talked about state aid, and Oliver has talked about the different angles. And I would like to ask, first of all, Pierre Chastanet, how do you think that the European Chips Act 2.0 proposal should convey some of the investments needs from the private sector to actually put into practice these needs? I mean, sometimes we tend to think that open source is one of the solutions, which may be correct, but there is another question, which is the existence of demand. Because we can have a very good offer in some angles of the semiconductor industry, for example, photonics, but the most paramount need is to have the demand. So Pierre, if you can follow up on that, or if you want to reflect first on this narrative for a CHIPS Act 2.0, it will be very interesting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Raquel, and many thanks to Oliver and Javier for their very complementary perspective on this. So when we look at the CHIPS Act 2.0, we see this could be articulated around two key directions of reviewing. And the first one is very much, as you pointed out, Raquel, responding to the recommendation of Professor Draghi, and the fact that we should capitalize on our strengths in the first place. So we have to look at where Europe is good at and can keep a competitive advantage. And when you look a bit more in detail, there are many areas where Europe is very good at. Let's take materials and wafer, for instance. We have some of the best companies in the world producing advanced material for semiconductor. We're capable of producing and shipping globally those advanced material. Same thing on manufacturing equipment. I mentioned in my previous intervention the gap on the fact that we do not have capacity in Europe to manufacture AI chip. Conversely, nobody can produce an AI chip in the world without European equipment. A company like ASML from the Netherlands and its entire ecosystem of startup and SMEs were providing smaller parts to ASML. It's like 2,000 SMEs, represent the spearhead of Europe's competitiveness in semiconductor manufacturing. We have, I think all of us mentioned this, some of the best research technology organization in the world, and our pilot line have demonstrated that. I mean, US companies, Japanese companies, they come to Europe to get access to state-of-the-art innovation in semiconductor technologies. They come to IMEC in Belgium and now in Spain. They come to CEA in Grenoble. They go to Fraunhofer in Germany, because we do have the best research technology organization for chips. RISC-V was mentioned. We do have invested a lot in RISC-V technologies, initially for our high-performance computing program, like the Barcelona Supercomputing Center. That has allowed to see the emergence of a small ecosystem of startups who are designing chips for high-performance computing, but conversely subsequently for AI. So they are designing AI processor, AI accelerator for the need of Europe. And now what we're trying to foster and would like to accelerate under CHIPS Act 2 is how can we use RISC-V to fuel other critical sectors that are in need of AI chip, automotive in the first place. We must develop a European hardware platform for automotive. We cannot rely on provision from third countries to put the chips in our future cars that will allow autonomous driving. We must develop these capacities in Europe, capitalizing on what we have done on RISC-V for our high-performance computing. Finally, we have great competencies on essential chips, legacy chips, foundational nodes, however you want to call it. But when it comes to sensors, power electronics, photonics, microcontrollers. Europe is best in class in the world. We have some of the top 4 companies in those areas with NXP, Infineon, Bosch, and ST Microelectronics, with sites that are spread all over Europe. So that's a key message. We have to capitalize on our strengths and reinforce those strengths. Then you had a very good point on the demand side, and that's maybe a shortcoming of the first CHIPS Act that was very much supply-driven, and Oliver highlighted this as well. In the CHIPS Act 2, we must look at the needs of the European industry. We have to look at those vertical sectors that will be the driver of the future demand in semiconductor technologies, and notably on the most advanced chips. So in the automotive sector, in robotics and industrial automation, in cloud and data infrastructure, in the telecom sector, in aeronautics and defense, in healthcare, in energy as well. Those are the sectors from which we must understand the type of chips that they need to stimulate their competitiveness and develop their adoption of AI technologies. And this should be at the heart of the revision of the CHIPS Act. How can we then translate those sectoral requirements into technological development? So then we can start identifying what type of manufacturing capacity do we need for AI chips? What sort of advanced packaging will we need to integrate different components, mainstream and advanced, into packages that can respond to the flexibility that our user industries need? And finally, how can we make sure that the chips that we produce in Europe, regardless of the level of technology, how can we make sure that they are trusted and that they are low power? We want to develop technologies that respond to the energy challenges of Europe and that use security as a differentiator. We want people in the world to recognize that chips made in Europe respond to the highest need of trustworthiness, so that people can actually trust Europe. In the context, in the current geopolitical context, people must see Europe as the reliable partner to get access to semiconductor technologies. And that's where we should invest and put our money in the next CHIPS Act. Thank you.
Thank you, Pierre. And now let's move to Oliver. And how do you think that we could foster a self-sustaining ecosystem that complements both design and manufacturing, also reflecting on Pierre Chastanet's presentation? Thank you, Oliver.
Let's find the microphone. So, I found
it. You are muted, Oliver. We cannot hear you.
No, okay. Now.
Okay, now thank you.
Okay, now it's better. Yeah, okay, sorry. And I will add some arguments, of course, but let me first come back to the last point of Pierre. I think this can really make the point, makes a difference in the world. I made this experience. If you talk to governments and companies who are looking for really trustworthy chips, then they come to Europe, yes, and for the production, for official documents, for passports, and then they ask our European companies to do these jobs. No? And but coming back to your point, and to build a self-sustaining ecosystem, and this includes for me design, research, and talent, and at some points. And without these, fabs alone cannot secure long-term innovation or sovereignty. And let me structure this process in 3 steps, because the challenges and the opportunities go far beyond factories. The step 1 is we have to broaden the scope beyond production. Europe lacks in design and efficiency. Whoever owns design and intellectual property owns the value. If you want to lead in areas like AI, Europe must not only build chips, but also design them and strengthen those working on our chips' efficiency. Step 2 is to strengthen the network approach. We need collaborative R&D across borders. Europe has excellent research centers, Javier mentioned, such as IMEC. We have Fraunhofer and many more. but too often these efforts remain fragmented. The CHIP Act, the new CHIP Act, should strengthen EU-wide R&D programs, linking universities, labs and industry across member states. We must support shared pilot lines and innovation hubs that involve the whole value chain, from materials and equipment to chip design and software. And the third step is no ecosystem works without people. Europe faces a skills gap. We need thousands of new engineers, technicians, and researchers in the next decade. CHIPS Act 2.0 must help build a robust talent pipeline. That means investing in education, from vocational training to advanced degrees together with industry. It means retraining workers from other sectors and creating mobility programs. And we must make Europe attractive enough that global talent comes and stays. The first CHIPS Act laid the foundation, but it cannot be the final word. A CHIP Act 2 must cover the whole value chain with long-term cross-border clusters, leverage Europe's existing strengths, and mobilize finance and talent at European scale. Only by thinking and acting as a true European network can we reach strategic autonomy and global competitiveness. This is the second part, and I think this is also as necessary as doing investment, willing to invest in skills, in people. I see it here in my constituency. I'm here today in Dresden, and by this new investment of TSMC and Infineon, we will have 30,000 people more living here in the regions by the next 10 years. Yeah? And it's people who are working here in this industry, not only in the fabs, also at the supplier level, but they're coming here with their families and their children. And therefore, it's more than a question of building an educational system. It's also to invest in the whole infrastructure of a region. And therefore, it's I ask for these regions who do this additional value to European strength. We should also look how we can help these regions to develop the infrastructure. And because it's so cost intensive to establish and to invest in these infrastructures we have in these cluster parts. Yes? And everyone who has a fab in his region, other big companies knows about water supply, energy supply. These are all things what the local and the regional government has to invest. And therefore, we have to think how we, with the European budget, can also help these regions to develop really a top infrastructure to make these regions attractive to attract these companies. Thanks.
Thank you very much, and also thanks for pointing out this mention to the fragmentation of the actions among member states. I think this is completely true, and we can see it as well across other policy areas. And now, as we have only 4 minutes left, I will move fastly to Javier Ponce to reflect on this discussion on open source, the need to generate demand, and how we can build a self-sustaining semiconductor ecosystem within Europe.
Thank you. I will promise just to be quick and concrete on some ideas. First of all, I would like just to congratulate with the slides of coming from Pierre, because I think Spain has paved the way in a right direction, just supporting design. And mainly on RISC-V, as I mentioned before. Not only that, because we launched also a call for proposal for subventions 2 years ago, just to deploy new capabilities on design. But first of all, we have paved the way for doing one of the clear necessities that we have in Europe. I would like just also to point out a second need that we will appear just now. This is the hybridization between microelectronics and photonics. It is a critical area that will appear for the next years to deploy. NVIDIA has announced just this type of new designs coming jointly, these two technologies, and we need just to foresee what are the evolution in order to prepare Europe for doing it in a right way, because this will change the macro semiconductors activity for mainly data centers and AI chips that will be the boosting area for the next decade. I think Europe are doing right now a good action in relation with gigafactories in AI, because it's creating demand for the next years in AI in Europe. And how we can deploy develop the skill capabilities of manufacturing is a real need in Europe, but it's a big difficulty now. For me, just analyzing what are the main report in the sectors, I have detected we need two main issues. It's one issue, but you can divide it in two. It's a needed critical mass at the top of the added value chain. That is, we need enough capabilities in investors, and we don't have in Europe larger investors able to put, when you are looking for an investment more than 200, 300 million euros, you always, at the end, are looking outside investors from Europe. And this is a big mistake. Draghi report has said something in relation to that. We need to do something to be able to allocate the savings in Europe has to be invested in Europe, because for the last 2-3 decades, the money has moved into state, and they are making the largest investment in the world. We need just to preserve the savings, our savings, to invest here. And this critical mass also has to be put at the end of the added value chain. So we need to create a real demand, an aggregated demand. And we have done in the past in some areas. For example, in aeronautics, Europe now is the leader because was able just to join effort coming from several countries, large countries, putting together all the capacities they have. And now we have the leader in aeronautic sector. Why we cannot do that? Aggregating demand for chips in the future, when we will have to offer design and manufacturing capacities, we need the demand ready to buy these semiconductors. That is critical things we need to do.
Okay, thanks very much. Actually, now the screen set time's up, so I will summarize in 30 seconds the main elements that have been shared in this discussion. So I will highlight, first of all, this proposal for a new CHIPS Act 2.0. I think it's very welcomed by the industry and also by different stakeholders. Thanks, Pierre, for sharing it. I think that this identification of strategic priorities and the sector-based verticals where this CHIPS Act 2.0 proposal aims to focus on will be highly valuable, and also in terms of collecting inputs from the stakeholders. Also, I think that Oliver has shared a very relevant point on the fragmentation among member states and the need to balance the efforts made by the European Commission and the efforts made at the national level by some member states, ensuring that there is coherence vis-a-vis the current external third country scenarios and the security risks and challenges that we are facing currently now from different partners and also from different countries. And finally, I think that you, Javier, you have shared the interesting elements on this open source element and the need to generate demand, which I personally think it will not be that easy. So thanks very much for the discussion. Now we have another session, and we look forward to speaking later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good luck for the forum.
Muchas gracias.